Hello, I'm Kevin Smet from Learning Alias, and I want to talk to you today about hull alignment. I have a C-pillar here. This is an Audi A5, but it is a theoretical C-pillar because it will be fully blended, and the real A5 actually has a tangent line running through, a tangent discontinuous character line, if you will. But this will be a very, very good example to show CV alignment. So I think a lot of people, maybe they're afraid of CV hulls. You see I'm in wireframe, and let me turn on some tighter tolerances. There we go. I'm in wireframe, and don't be afraid of the wireframe, and don't be afraid of the CV hulls. I think a lot of people are afraid of CV hulls. They turn on the shading all the time. They turn off the CV hulls because they don't want to see it. And then they use tools like freeform blend, and away they go. Now you can use freeform blend and you can work without CV hulls, but I'm going to show you a way that working with the CV hulls that is foolproof, and that's the beauty of it. This will be a curve-based methodology, and it will be a square-based methodology. So basically I'm going to use EP Curve, I'm going to use the Align tool, and I'm going to use the Square tool as my primary tools, and Move CV. Now if you have a newer version of Alias, this will be called Transform CV, and it does have some pretty nifty enhancements. But I have Move CV here, and it will do the job just fine. So now I want to make this blend. Let me turn off the model, and I'm going to put it in showroom because I am going to look at the shaders. It's not like I'm going to work in wireframe only. So you can see there's some pretty good highlight flow already. This rear screen is a theoretical surface. The real rear screen is actually offset down, or just moved in the Y direction, or maybe moved down, I don't know exactly. Anyway, it does not align with the actual deck. But for our case, it will. And the theoretical surface, to get the continuity right everywhere, will. So let's see what kinds of continuity we've got. So yeah, of course I use the surface continuity locator. And it all looks pretty okay. And yeah, that's all good. Let's try this one. Alright, first port of call. You get face continuity on this C-pillar surface. So you think, great, I can start building my blend. But that's not actually true, because you can have continuity on this surface, but have a discontinuity with the edge of this surface, especially if this is a trim edge. Now in this case, it's a natural edge, so our chances of not having continuity are somewhat smaller. But anyway, it's a great idea to check this, and you can do it with the curve continuity locator. So this locator, we'll put it on curvature. It's a little tricky because at the intersections you have a lot of different edges joining up, and the preview is not foolproof, so I basically just pick something, and I happen to be right. And I pick this one, and there is an angle of 66 degrees, so I think I picked the wrong edge. So let's try that again. So that edge, and then that edge. Now it's good. And it shows us 0, so the locator is green. We can always, with the locator still picked, go to the information window, and we can see our tolerance levels and the tolerances that we're getting. So in our case, it's perfect. We've got no gap, it's perfectly tangent, and it's perfectly curvature continuous. So that's excellent. We can start building a blend. The same would have to be true, of course, on this side, and the same would have to be true on these sides. Now another thing that we're going to check before we start building the blend is this curve on surface and how beautiful it is. We do that using the curvature continuity tool. So let's crank up the samples and let's give it a go. And actually, before I do anything, I'm going to turn off auto scale so that I can be absolutely sure it is telling me the truth, because I thought it was one big curve, but it's actually not. So we can scale it up or down with the left mouse, and we can increase or decrease the sample size with the middle mouse. I'm just going to make it really, really high. And we can see the curve on surface here. I could pick this one too. There we go. And just rescale it a little bit, just to reset the scale. We can see that's a beautiful curve on surface. Just beautiful. Now we have to look at it from all angles. We have to look at it kind of looking at it like this. We can see it kind of goes down, it kind of goes up, and this is like the inflection. That's not perfect. We could work that out, but I don't think that's going to be that much of a problem. Let me turn off the grid. Certainly from a top-ish perspective, the chrome looks very smooth indeed. Absolutely beautiful looking, and so we can delete the combs. So we've checked that we've got curve continuity between the surface edges of our surface set. We've checked that any curves on surface we've got are smooth and don't have any internal kinks, and also don't have a kink where they connect with another curve on surface on this big shoulder surf. So now we can finally start building the blend. So let me first re-put on the CV hull. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make curves. And you can see I've got a curve on surface right here, that I've used to construct this surface. I've already got a curve on surface here. I've done that before. But now I need also one on the shoulder. About right there. Let me turn off the shading. You're going to hear me say that often. So about right there. And then about right here. And here we have a choice. We could edge align this, or we could make it skewed. We'll see what gives us the best result. So, now how do we make a curve on surface? We could do it using construction planes, which I do like, but I'm going to use a different method for here. I'm going to use a curve projected from the top view. So let me go to the top view, which is F5 on my system. And I'm going to pick, okay, I've got a lot of tabs here. I'm going to put some of these back in hiding, just general housekeeping, and I'm going to make a degree 2 uniform curve. Now it's going to be single span, so the knot spacing doesn't really matter, but I like to put it on uniform anyway. Curve degree 2 is what I want, because it will give me a very nice, easy to control curve. Check out what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn off the shading. Now, I'm going to give this just a little bit of crown. I mean, it's not really crown, just a little bulginess, so it's not perfectly linear. And I'm just going to go to the Surface Edit, Project tool, select my surface that I want to project, select the curve, and go into F8, which is back into perspective. And you can see we have a little curve on surface here, and it was projected from this curve right here. Now, if we want to be really tidy, I could move the curve up, just in Z, just a little bit, so it's somewhat closer right here, and then we can put this on a layer, we can hide it. That will be a very tidy way of working. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new curve. This is going to be the real curve. Degree 5, uniform. I'm going to Control-Alt on this curve on surface to snap to it. Now I have my settings set to have snap points at the ends, at intersections, and also one in the middle. That's pretty cool. But of course I'm going to use the endpoints here. There, so I've snapped it to both endpoints. Now I have a linear curve. I always tumble the view and I always look in pretty much all directions. Now in this case there ain't much to look at until we use the Object Edit Align tool. So we go into Align, and I ask for curvature, and I'm going to align to this curve on surface. And I tend to use the pick nothing here and then put that back and align this too. And don't worry if it doesn't look bad yet. And right now we're going to use degree 5 so that all of our CVs are controlled by the Align tool. We have no degrees of freedom that are unconstrained. So basically this curve is fully constrained because these three CVs, position, tangent, and curvature, are constrained by the Align tool to be curvature to this curve on surface, and this position tangent, and curvature CV are fully constrained to be curvature to this curve on surface. The only degrees of freedom that we have is that we can slide with this a little bit. That's it. And that ain't a lot of freedom. So, the curve does not look very good. How can we fix this? How can we change this? Well, we use our projected curve. So I'm going to assume this curve on surface is the way I want it, because that's data that I had to work with. And it should be pretty good. It looks kind of okay. Maybe I would want to change this just a little bit so that it's not at this much of an angle, but I'm going to work with what I've got. So I'm going to pick this curve again and move it even closer. And I like to put off my palette and go to the layouts and then go to top perspective. So this gives us, by default, a camera view right here and a top view right there. And the camera view is bigger than the top view. For our workflow, this is exactly what we want. So that's kind of the default, and I like that. So we've got a degree 2 curve that we can play with. We can move it and just really play with that and really zoom in on it. I really like to zoom in on this and then kind of like that and just move it. Just move it around until it's looking better. So at the end point right here, you can see I'm overbuilding this curve, so I never have to worry that my curve on surface will project and it won't touch the trim edge of the shoulder. So I kind of like that. I can play with this because actually it needs much less of an arc. Really, if you make it linear, it will probably be fine, but I like giving it just a tiny little bit of curvature because nothing on a car is completely linear. Oh, look at that. That's looking pretty sweet. Oh, but not really. See? I mean, I thought it looked pretty good from one angle, then I changed my viewpoint and it doesn't look good anymore. So always tumble the view and try to find a view where the whole curve appears planar. I can always do Control Z. Whoa! It's a little sensitive. So let me put on the Move CV so I have access to the step size. Again, in more recent versions of Alias, you don't have to go into the Move CV or Transform CV in order to have step size. So that's looking pretty alright. I want to make sure this is really good. I'm going to move this one. Alright, that one doesn't really need to move too much. And then that. And you can see I'm making use of construction history to do the work, well, somewhat for me, I guess. So I move this down, and then that looks pretty nasty, so I move that. Okay. We need even finer control. Okay, I think I kind of like this. So we tumble it around. We're going to go back into a fully camera view. So we see we have a certain view where it appears planar. But it's not planar. It's not linaic because it follows this curve on surface, which has a bit of a curvature to it, and it goes into that. And it's, I mean, it's an arc. Well, it's not an arc, but it has an arc-like structure to it. Now that's a curve that we can really work from. Now I'm going to delete this, and then of course I lose my construction history. A really good way would be to create a layer, put it in there, and then hide the layer. But I know this curve is good, and I'm going to direct model my surfaces anyway to really achieve the fine control that I need. But you need good curves first, and then what I tend to do is I go and query edit the history on one of either end, and I put this on degree 6, excuse me, because I'm working to degree 6 here. Degree 6 is very nice because it gives us a position, a tangent, and curvature CV on either side, and a free CV that lets us control the peak of the acceleration of the blend. But I only do this after I've aligned it, because otherwise we have a stray CV, because this CV right here has full degree of freedom. It can move any way it wants. It's not constrained by anything. So it's kind of an interpolated CV. So I try to make my curve good first and then the CV. Alright, now we're going to do this once more, and then we can start getting into the surface creation, which is what you're all here for, of course. So I'm going to try and see, well, definitely we need a curve on surface here, so I'm going to do exactly the same workflow. I go into F5, or really I could use a different workflow if you want to. I mean, I'm not going to show the same thing all over. I'm going to try and do a construction plane this time. I don't even really need the top view for this. I just use a 3-point plane and I Control-Alt so I can curve snap up to the end of that. And then I Control-Alt so I can curve snap to this. And then I got a little manipulator. And now here I just happen to know my curve on surface is chunked up. So if we move this and I turn on Control, you can see, Control-Alt, you can see that I have multiple snap points, these little pink dots. I don't know where it's getting at, but it must be finding some sort of intersection somewhere. But I also have a little blue line. Now that blue line is the end of one curve on surface and the start of another, or vice versa if you so please. So I'm going to snap it to this so I have a curve on surface that lines up exactly with that. So the way that you have your curve on surface on the shoulder will also determine where you can put your curves. Because if the curve is not on a curve on surface, your square tool is not going to like it if there's a little gap, or it's slightly over aligns. And then you have little sliver surfaces and tiny little patches just because the curve on surface. So the structure of the curves on surface need to be good. Now the way I tend to check that is by using the square tool. So just pick a boundary, any boundary, and it will just pick a curve on surface. It's that easy. And you can see where the construction plane coincides, it's with one of the ends. And now this was a great method. I would not use a curve to do this because it's somewhat harder to control the endpoint. So you can see I have diagnosed a problem here. Now the problem is I didn't take into account my original curve on surface structure. So you can see the curve on surface, it's really right here, but I like the curve the way it is. I don't want to move the curve over there. It will slant it too much. There'll be too much skew. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to untrim the shoulder. Hoopla! To get my curves on surface back. And so the first thing I'll do is I will use the detach tool and detach where it finds that intersection, hit go, and then I have a little stray curve on surface, remove it, and then this is kind of a blend. I just tend to delete it, make a curve, degree 5, Control-Alt snap it, Control-Alt snap it, use the Align tool, go into Curvature, Curvature. Don't raise the degree or anything. And then project normal with pretty tight tolerances. Now in the newer version of Alias, you don't have to really worry about this anymore. Select the surface, select the curve, delete my original curve. I have a new curve on surface, and I have this, this, and this. Then before I retrim it again, I check the combs. Actually, I should have done this before I deleted my curve, so that I could slide around a little bit if the curve comb plot would not look just right. But usually this is pretty good. Yeah, see, this is pretty good. You don't have to worry about it too much because my Align tool completely constrained that degree 5 curve with curvature continuity on one or either side. Now, I could have maybe had to slide it around a bit to change the characteristic of the comb to give it more or less acceleration. But thankfully I didn't have to do that. But otherwise you keep the curve and you query edit the Align, you put on the combs first, and then you alternately play around with that. So it's good, so I can trim it. And I'm going to put on some shading. Now, you're going to be amazed maybe. And now I've got a structure I can work with. So again, I check with the square tool. Sorry, the shading can only last so long. You can see very clearly. So now I can build this last curve using this plane, I'm going to make a little COS, and then I'm going to project it up. This is going to turn out to be somewhat longer than I thought it was going to be, so I'm going to leave the surface creation for a second part in this tutorial. So I'm going to use let me again do some housekeeping. It's not a bad idea. I'm going to use the Surface Edit Intersect tool, and I'm going to pick the surface, pick the construction plane. Now don't detach anything yet. Do that curve thing. And use the Align tool. And fully constrain the curve. And check it out. Looks horrible. I'm sorry, it just does not look very good. So, you guessed it, we're going to have to change the curve on surface structure. You've seen how easy it is, and it doesn't really give us that much beef. And I'm going to also now show you the curvature comb thing, because it's actually kind of cool. So I'm just going to now this is bad, okay? This is horrible, but that doesn't mean that it's because of the construction plane. The construction plane gives beautiful results, but it's the curve on surface structure that wasn't good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, now you could say let's query edit the construction plane, but it sometimes gives you beef. Not this time. Sometimes it would say multiple objects selected. With the query edit tool, well, if that happens, you can go into construction and pick the plane tool, and then you're going to be right in at the same thing. So we're going to move this around. And the beautiful thing is, because we have construction history, and we weren't all paranoid, and we didn't detach the curve on surface that we have here, you know, like the first thing we do is detach it. No, we kept it, and we still have the construction history, and we can now, and you know, this is beautiful. You know, oh yeah. Sorry if I get a little excited, but I tend to do that sometimes when it's looking really good. Okay, so always tumble the view, look in all directions, and that's beauty. That's just beauty. And really, you know, maybe I'm the one being a little paranoid by using a curve. You know, so of course the plane creates a curve on surface that's completely linear, at least in some direction in space. But linearity is a pretty good characteristic of good surfaces and good curves. You want linaic transitions. That's also why you have the collinear options in, for example, the square tool, and it can give tremendously wonderful results. So let's pick nothing. And guess what? The last thing we're going to do, oh, of course, now I can delete the construction plane, and I can detach this, because it's neat, because you have this curve on surface now running from one boundary to the other boundary. If we try and trim it, you might just lose half your model. So that's no good, and it's good anyway. And we're going to direct model the surface set, so it's not like we need this forever. But you see, I kept it long enough to help me, but once it would start to get in my way, then I delete the construction history. So construction history to me is a tool that helps me, and once it doesn't help me anymore, I remove it. That's the beauty about Alias. It's not as constrained as a solid modeler, but it still gives you some of that flexibility by having such wonderful tools as Align and then Query Edit. So, I'm going to do one last thing here, and then I'm going to wrap her up. So you can see this ain't going to fly. So we need to change it. Well, thankfully, it's actually really easy. I think a lot of people, certainly me included, I was just really like, oh my god, it's not good, and then I have to untrim it, and then I have to reproject it, but really, once you do it a couple of times, it becomes a workflow, and it's not that bad. You know, you just untrim it, and boom, you've got it back. So what I'm going to do is exactly the same thing. I'm going to use the detach tool. I'm going to detach right there, and then delete the little curve on surface that's left. And I'm also going to delete this because it's rubbish. Now what I'm going to do is exactly the same thing. I'm going to go to that EP curve tool, degree 5, uniform, Control-Alt-Snap to one end, Control-Alt-Snap to the other end, then use the Align tool, to fully constrain this curve's degrees of freedom and project normal with pretty tight tolerances, pick the shoulder, pick the curve. Now what I'm going to do is something a little different. Alright, something I should have done the first time too. I'm going to pick the curve and turn off its controls. Now what this will give me is, I've still got construction history, but I don't have the clutter. I could also just make a new layer, select the curve, assign it, and then turn it off. So why does this still look green even though it is a curve on surface? It's because it has construction history. Okay? You can see I pick curve on surface and it picks it, so it's not the curve. Now what I'm going to do, before I do anything else, is I'm going to go into the Locator's curvature and just put some combs on it. Now, I was very careful to put the combs on the curve on surface, not the curve, because it's the curve on surface that's important. You know, the actual entity that I project normaled. That's what's the most important thing. I'm going to crank up the scale and crank up the values. And I'm going to turn this layer back on, and I'm going to turn this curve's CV hull structure back on, and I'm going to show you what I could do. If I query edit the curve, and actually in this case I think I can do it, so why not? You know, you see a tiny little kind of like, it's not really, it could be even smoother. So let's slide. Oh my god, it's getting worse. And then, what about there? I think we've got perfect smoothness. And now we can do the same thing over here. And here we can actually do it quite a bit. So I'm going to query edit the curve. I've got the comb on the curve on surface. So follow along with me, right? I query edit the curve. I project normal the curve onto the surface to create a curve on surface, the actual entity that will be there once we trim, and on that curve on surface, I'm putting the comb. Very important that you don't put the comb on the curve, because the curve eventually just goes away. The curve is not what you want to check. Okay, so, yeah, let's see, I think that's it. And now we can just delete the curve. And we can delete the locators. Another check we could do on this before I wrap it up, because we're going to do surfaces in another segment, so I might as well make this a bit more complete, is what I did before with the curve continuity tool. You can do the same thing on curves on surface. So this curve on surface and that curve on surface. Information window. We can see we have a slight curvature deviation. We could crank it up some more, slide it some more, and then get this, you know, even less. But I mean, it's zero. It's perfect. You know. I mean, the combs don't lie in a lot of cases. It depends also on the combs. You could put it on surf relative, and I think this will make a difference. So you can see it's kind of normal to the surface now with the surface relative option. This could be another very handy technique. Just different ways. Don't be married to one analysis tool or one technique of working in Alias. You have to use everything you've got. You use comb plots, you use continuity locators, you know, this is a surface relative comb plot. It's different. It goes normal to the surface instead of, well, I don't know, it's perpendicular, you know? It's perpendicular. So you can see that this is pretty good. I mean, this is pretty good. Again, if we look at it from the top, you can see this is kind of an inflectious area. This kind of goes down. This kind of goes up. Maybe we want to fix that. Maybe we could put this boundary just a little bit lower to help planarize the curve on surface a bit more. But we're not going to do that. So, seriously, you could, depending on the amount of quality, if this is Class A, yeah, I'd do that. Why not? Anything that makes it better is good. But we're not Class A. We just want a good quality theoretical blend thing going on. So I just trimmed the surface. And Houston, we have a curve network that we can work with. So in the next section of this hull alignment tutorial series, I guess, once you have more than one, or does that mean I need three? I don't know. Anyway, in the next segment we're going to start building our actual surfaces, and we're going to start actually sliding hulls, moving hulls, looking at hulls, analyzing hulls, the flow of the hull lines. That's going to be where the real magic happens. But this is just so important because this is the setup. This is something that you have to have before you do anything else. Oh, I just forgot something. Query edit, one of these curves. Oh, see, I don't have construction history anymore because I detached this curve on surface. I still like having the construction history on there. So, there, I just put it back. And I don't know if I still have it over here. No, I don't even have it over there either. So, I also... There. The reason we lost that is because this curve on surface, we decided to detach it after we did all the work. So just be careful of that. If you detach it first, it's no big deal. If you use the construction history and you only detach it afterwards, it becomes a bit of a problem if you don't remember to realign it. So anyway, what I wanted to do is put that extra degree in there. It's going to help us with the flow of the surface. And look at the flow that we've got, just slightly. You can sort of... Can you imagine connecting this CV with this CV, this CV, and this CV? And doing that for the other ones as well? That's pretty much what it's all about. So we're going to get into that in the next tutorial. So I've been Kevin Smet. I'm a student at Learning Alias, and see you in a bit.